Here is something most people getting close to retirement never want to hear. The number you retire with matters far less than what you actually do with it once the paychecks stop coming. And I know that sounds like a convenient thing to say if you have not saved enough. But stay with me, because the math is going to back this up completely. Today, we are talking about how ordinary retirees with ordinary portfolios, sometimes as little as $200,000, quietly end up with significantly more wealth a decade into retirement than they had on day one. Not because they got lucky, not because they picked the right stocks, but because of a structural dynamic that almost nobody talks about, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Welcome to my channel. I'm Wari, and I'm here to make money finally make sense. We break down basic finance concepts into simple, practical lessons, no confusing jargon, no boring lectures, because financial literacy shouldn't feel like solving a riddle written by your bank. Let me set the stage with something real. Imagine two retirees. Both leave work with $200,000. Both invest conservatively and earn around 6% annually. The difference is their withdrawal rate. The first retiree pulls out about $4,000 a year, roughly 2%. The second pulls out $12,000, which is 6%. After 12 years, the first retiree has nearly $370,000 despite making consistent withdrawals every single year. The second retiree has virtually nothing left. Same starting point. Same market returns, completely opposite outcomes. The only variable was how much space they left for compounding to actually work. That space is everything. And here is the critical insight that changes how you should think about this entire topic. The financial outcome of your retirement is largely determined before retirement ever begins. It is written into the life you built during your working years. Specifically, it comes down to whether your actual spending needs are low enough that your portfolio grows faster than you draw it down. When that gap exists, something almost magical happens in the financial physics of retirement. Your portfolio stops being a countdown clock and becomes a generator. It produces more than it loses. Month after month, year after year, the gap compounds in your favor. The base gets larger, which creates larger returns, which widens the gap further, which deepens your security, which enables better decisions across the board. Everything feeds itself. Now here is where most financial conversations drop the ball. They treat this as a savings rate problem. Save more, accumulate a bigger number, arrive at retirement with 1.5 or 2 million, and you will be fine. And look, arriving with more is obviously better. But the research tells a different story when you look closely. Behavioral decisions made in the first 5 to 7 years of retirement have more influence on your long-term financial outcome than the size of your portfolio at entry. A $1 million portfolio managed with peak earning year spending habits can get cut in half in the same time frame that a $200,000 portfolio managed with genuine intentionality nearly doubles. The number you start with is less important than the relationship you have with spending. So what does that relationship actually look like in practice? The retirees who quietly build wealth after leaving work share something specific. Over decades of working and living and trying things, they discovered through real experience that beyond a certain level of genuine comfort, additional spending stopped producing additional satisfaction. They stopped purchasing things to demonstrate success. They started prioritizing time, depth, and authentic experiences. They built friendships and interests that happened to cost very little to maintain. Their daily sense of contentment became genuinely independent of their daily level of expenditure. That independence is not a constraint. It is a superpower, Because a person whose satisfaction does not require continuous consumption can retire on almost any reasonable portfolio and still come out ahead. A person whose satisfaction does require continuous consumption will struggle regardless of what they saved. There is also a psychological dimension here that compounds over time in either direction. When your portfolio is shrinking faster than you are comfortable with, every market dip feels like a personal threat. Every unexpected expense feels like it is collapsing your runway. Your mind operates in a defensive crouch, and that posture is expensive. It leads to selling at the wrong moments, delaying health decisions because the cost feels threatening, and making reactive choices instead of thoughtful ones. Contrast that with the retiree whose balance is quietly larger than it was last year. Decisions slow down, options multiply. The same unexpected expense arrives into a completely different financial environment and simply gets absorbed. Same life event, entirely different landing. The difference is architectural, and architecture is built before retirement begins. Let me give you something concrete to work with. If you are approaching retirement and your fixed monthly costs are genuinely modest, you may be closer to this dynamic than you realize. The threshold that separates the retiree in growth mode from the one in depletion mode is not a specific dollar amount in the account. It is the moment when your essential monthly costs drop below the natural growth rate of your portfolio. Once that gap opens, even modestly, the trajectory becomes almost self-reinforcing. You do not need to be a brilliant investor. You need to have built a life that does not require the portfolio to be a financial pressure relief valve. One more dimension worth discussing is the role of purposeful engagement after leaving traditional work. The retirees who continue building wealth are disproportionately the ones who stay involved in something meaningful, not because they need the money, but because their experience and knowledge genuinely has value to others. Consulting, advising, mentoring, board involvement. When you engage this way from a position of complete financial freedom rather than necessity, you set your own terms entirely. Even modest income from work you have freely chosen, something in the range of $12,000 to $15,000 annually, changes the math dramatically. At that level, your withdrawal rate approaches zero. The portfolio does not just hold steady, it accelerates. And the compounding of purpose and continued relevance keeps your mind sharp alongside your finances. Here is the warning I need to give you clearly because it is counterintuitive and genuinely costly if ignored. One of the most financially destructive instincts in early retirement is the feeling that decades of discipline have finally earned the right to spend freely. That instinct is completely human and completely understandable, but acting on it without awareness can lock in a trajectory that is very difficult to reverse. Every expansion of your fixed costs in those first few years raises the floor of what your portfolio must sustain, potentially, for the next 25 or 30 years. A significant vehicle purchase in year 2 does not just cost the price of the vehicle. It establishes a new expectation baseline. A renovation driven by the sense that your home has finally earned an upgrade does not just cost the renovation. It signals to your spending psychology that the era of intentionality is finished. Think about it this way. Every $35,000 you spend at a 6% return represents $2,100 of annual income you no longer have access to. Over 20 years, that is $42,000 that simply will not exist when you might need it most. This is not an argument against spending. You are living a real life, and it requires real spending. It is an argument for spending with complete awareness of the actual cost, Not just the sticker price, but the compounding price. Make every significant trade consciously, knowing what you are genuinely exchanging and why it is worth it. The retirees who quietly moved from 200,000 to something significantly larger did not achieve that through exceptional timing or special knowledge. They did it by becoming, over many years before retirement, people whose genuine contentment did not depend on continuous consumption. They protected that condition once retirement began, and one ordinary morning, probably unremarkable in every other way, they checked a balance and found it larger than when they started. Not dramatically, just measurably, undeniably, genuinely larger. That quiet discovery is available to more people than financial media would have you believe. The retirement that grows is not built in retirement. It is built in the years before it, through the slow work of becoming someone whose enough is actually enough. Start that work now wherever you currently are in the process. Your future self will feel something they may not have thought to expect. Not just relief that they made it, but genuine gratitude that they made it well. If this gave you something to think about, subscribe and come back for the next one.